People would always say, oh, well, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. But I'm like, he did make Adam and Steve, and Freddie Mercury, and Elton John, and Adam Lambert, and David Archuleta.
David, you came out here tonight to win, and what we have witnessed is a knockout.
Being on American Idol, every week I was like, I don't deserve to be here. I feel so unworthy, I feel ashamed. I feel like people don't really know who I am. So who are they falling in love with? Because I was like, I can't show you who I am entirely. Because if I did, like, you would all be disappointed in me. I don't know, that's how I looked at it. And there's something wrong with me that I still need to fix. I think that's what made it the most miserable experience for me, was having to feel like I never deserved to be there and still get voted through each week, and feeling exhausted just by being in front of people and exposed when I wanted to hide so bad. So even though I was having a lot of success in the public, I was sleeping in my car a lot of times because that's what I believed I deserved. So it's nice to look back and be like, I got through that. Like, in my very imperfect way of doing it, but I made it through it. And I found a way to feel better about myself. And even if I wasn't able to accept it at the time, I can like look back like 16, 17 years later and say, I worked my ass off. Even if I didn't accept it at that time and receive it, I can receive where I'm at now. And it's like, wow, what a difference.
I no longer like to, pretend like everything's fine and I'm great and all that, if I'm not feeling that way. I'm sure it's had to do with this last year, with figuring out everything, coming out, and trying to understand what that means for me and the changes and adjustments it's made into my life.
I was still like so scared when I first came out. I'm like, I was just like, oh, like I was still like afraid to be seen. You feel like a lost cause, and you feel like no one understands you, which must mean that you are the problem. There's something wrong with you. And when I came out, I had so many messages of people, other closeted Mormons or people who had just come out or had been out, explaining that. I was like, they're saying my story. So I just was like, where is this pattern coming from? Like, what is causing us to all get to this point? And realizing that church leaders feel like they're doing the best that they know how to address what they think is the issue, because they think it's gay people and their choices that are causing them to feel this way, and it's not. It is really the isolation they're feeling and the pressure from the demands that they're getting out of religion to be a certain way, live a certain way, and feeling like they'll never be enough. I was almost willing to give my life up because I was so devoted to what I believed. One of my friends tried to save me, and they just said, as your friend, I cannot allow you to follow this path of sin. It is not of God. And I said, well, the reason I'm taking this path is because I felt God tell me. And it's like, well, my relationship with God is different than with yours. And if you won't even listen to gay people, how are you gonna know what our relationship with God looks like? And so at that point, I was just kind of like, you know what, then I'm not gonna call it God, I don't wanna be religious, because I started going to other churches and I was hearing the same rhetoric. I was hearing, oh, well, if you have this sin of homosexuality in you, let's cast it out and try to heal you. And I was like, I already tried that. I'm like, that's your solution here too? Like, that's not gonna work. It's gonna be a Band-Aid over a gaping wound. And you're all gonna pretend like, oh, we fixed them, God is great. And that person's hurting and suffering and deteriorating and will silently go away, and y'all will forget about that person, because it always happens. So I was just kind of like, you know what, I don't wanna be religious anymore because it hurts too much to go. But I realized, I'm like, this is worth it, because my life changed, and I was just like, wow, I don't have to let other people accept me. I can do that myself. I can accept myself. When I started sharing my story with other people, they're just like, have you thought of writing a book? And specifically, it was a conversation with my friend Jeanette McCurdy, because we both were raised as Latter-day Saints, or Mormon, and she was talking about the book she had just finished making, I'm Glad My Mom Died. And I was like, I've thought about writing a book actually. And she said, I If you're okay with it, I would really love to introduce you to the team that I released my last book with. I think they understood what I wanted to do, why I wanted to tell the story I had, and what my goal with it was. Not everyone gets to being able to have that moment of coming out and accepting themselves, because a lot of them feel it's better to cut life short before they get there. Then I started hearing stories of people who they were family, they were friends, and their brother or their cousin took their life because they thought that was a better option. My goal with the book is to help people who grew up in with the same mentality that I did, to be more understanding and say, wait a second, we should reconsider this. And hopefully I walk them through to see why it's a beautiful thing, and it's not necessary to look at it as sinful or evil, and it's a beautiful contribution to life and society. The people who are working on the audiobook side of it started commenting and saying, wow, like this part of your story really hit home. And I'm like, wait, they're not gay, they're not religious, but they understand difficult family dynamics. That was another goal. Like, I wanted to talk about things that I never felt I was allowed to talk about, like sexual abuse, allegations, like those topics. That I was like, I always felt like we weren't allowed to talk about this. I think a lot of people still remember my dad as like this bad guy. Anytime he was in the news, he was always known as the difficult stage dad who mistreats his son. And so for him, he's just like, I thought we were past that. Like, why do we have to bring that up? And I was just like, you know what? My story won't be understood if you don't know that dynamic. And he said, you know what? I'm willing to talk and tell my side. You know, what was the reason I opened up about this stuff? It was to connect with people, to help them feel seen, help them work through their stuff, because I feel like I'm in a good enough place where I've worked through all this, through sexuality, through religion, through family trauma. And my family has worked through it too, which is really amazing. Like, we've become a lot stronger, and we've found a lot of healing by talking about the hard things. I talk about dating. I talk about briefly like my engagements. It wasn't necessarily that I didn't feel anything for them that made it not work. It was just that I thought I had to completely heal myself from feeling feelings for guys before I would be good enough to make a marriage work. So, you know, I still loved them. I still felt attracted to them, but the shame was so intense that I just was like, I can't do this. I can't move forward. And I feel like they deserved more than the shameful place I was working from to make it work. It should have been from a place of peace and like loving each other, rather than the fear of, I've got to change myself. I'm not gonna be so strict about what I'm looking for. I'm gonna experiment and see what works best for me. As far as like how the relationship will look and what the goals are, I think it'll depend on the person. Not everything's binary, and I'm just myself. And whoever I feel attracted to or wanna get to know, and there's a mutual interest and connection, and we find common goals, then explore it from there. So I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm just grateful to be here, like to be alive. Like, you know, that could have been not an option that I chose. I'm just grateful to be here, and let's see what I can do with my life while I'm here. I just love that. Like, for me, that's like enough. Before, I used to be like, I have to see the big picture, like even after this life. Like, I was so focused on after this life. I wasn't living in this life.